Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast, brought to you by BedroomBattlefields.com. It's the audio equivalent of a glossy blood red and goblin green mid-90s copy of White Dwarf blown around the icy ruins of Frostgrave. I'm your host, Matthew, and I really appreciate you choosing to spend some time with us today. Let's dive in. So, welcome to the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast, Gigi. You've been on every other podcast out there. I thought it was about time to get you on this one.
Well, I don't know about every other podcast, but yeah, I've been around.
Yeah, you do the rounds. You do the rounds. So I first heard your dulcet tones on the Orchard, I'm sure, and then you've obviously been doing a fair bit on Josh's podcast as well, and now you've went out on your own there and started your own show. So is there any other shows that you pop up on regularly?
No, definitely not regularly, and I don't think there are any other shows that I've been on. Well, there are some local Dutch things that I've done for radio and everything, but that's not hobby related, so that is more work related. But yeah, those are the three big ones. Yeah,
so you obviously enjoy getting behind the microphone then and doing a bit of podcasting.
Yeah, I didn't know that I did until Nathan invited me to come onto the Wargames Orchard and to participate in one of his episodes. And then later on, he made me a co-host. So yeah, apparently that's something that I definitely like to do. I like to talk about the things that interest me. I'm also a public speaker, so there's that. I do like to talk about things that pique my interest. So I was just surprised that there were so many people that wanted to listen to what I had to say.
Yeah, it's been really interesting listening through the conversations that you've had, both the solo episodes and conversations with various co-hosts, including Nathan. So I think a lot of us are in the position that for those of us who grew up with the Warhammer world pre-internet, we had a very finite amount of information. We only really had the books or magazines that we had. And nowadays there's information available that gives us a more rounded picture of the whole history and the evolution of the games. And I think you've done a really good job bringing us that information, filling in the blanks, things we weren't aware of, timelines and different gaming systems and that. So I really appreciate all the time that you put into that.
Yeah, well, I like researching this stuff, and one of the first things I did solo was the 5th edition campaign packs for Warhammer Fantasy, and just figuring out when and where these things took place, if you could put it in a sort of coherent place within the greater Warhammer lore. Just looking at that and researching things, and there's fortunately also some materials on the internet that are very helpful, like the Warhammer Lexicanum and Warhammerpedia or something like that, Warhammer Wikipedia. So it's just a lot of fun figuring this stuff out, and I started in 6th edition playing Warhammer. At the tail end of 5th edition I had some introduction games, but everything before that was just a big blank for me. So when I started collecting the game, at first I just played regularly and played all the editions that came out as they came out. And then after the game was ended, I still kept collecting miniatures, and it was only a couple of years ago that I thought, well, let's see if there are still people playing. I thought I was one of the few. But it turns out that there were still many people, even in the Netherlands here, playing all these old games and old editions. And that really got me interesting in finding out all the different source books and everything that was released. At first, I thought I'm going to collect everything from 4th edition upwards. And then I got some 3rd edition materials that I could get relatively cheaply, and then I thought, well, there's not so much for 1st and 2nd edition, so let's also try to hunt that down. So yeah, now I'm what I'm doing on the podcast that I just started, the Forces of Fantasy, if I may plug that a little bit. I'm going through all the Warhammer publications, Warhammer Fantasy publications, starting at first edition, and this is basically just a learning experience for me because as I'm doing the podcast, that's more or less the first time that I'm reading through these materials. So I'm just trying to figure it out as I go, which hopefully is interesting to the listeners.
Yeah, it certainly is. Like I say, it's it helps us fill in the blanks because we a lot of us haven't played all these editions or haven't experienced them before. Is there anything that's like shocked is maybe a strong word, but when you've been going through all these things for the first time, is there anything that's really jumped out or surprised you at any point?
Yeah, a couple of things actually, and the main one is how similar the rules were right from the get-go to what it has been in the edition that whenever you joined. So if you say started in like me in 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy, then there are some rules differences between 5th and 6th edition, and between 4th and 5th, and between 4th and 3rd. But if you go back, the things that are the same, to me at least, seem to be much. There are more things that are the same than there are different. If you get what I mean. So
why do you think that is?
Stat line is something like that straight from the get-go. There are some differences, but yeah, well, I think don't change a winning theme. So if you have a formula that works, then just go with it, and then you just tweak it a little bit, and you maybe add a phase here or move the magic phase from the end of the turn to right after movement or something like that. But other than that, if you have something that works, then just keep it, and you don't need to change the game too much between editions. And for some reason, I thought first edition would be way out there, not even comparable to any later edition of Warhammer Fantasy. But it's right from the very start, you can recognize it as Warhammer.
And what edition, if you could only pick one, would you kind of opt for? Like, what's your favourite edition?
I think that would have to be 6th. Well, I'm a little bit tossed up between 6th edition and 5th edition, or at least one of the Hero Hammer editions, because I do like the style of the Hero Hammer era, where you had these epic characters and everything, and small model count armies. But I think in 6th edition, that's the edition that you saw the game getting the most love from Games Workshop itself, with all the different summer campaigns and stuff like that. Every single army had its own army book. Well, that's not true, because Chaos Dwarves and Dogs of War didn't get an army book in 6th edition, but at least Dogs of War got the White Dwarf lists, and you also got a lot of other White Dwarf lists and options, and you got the General's Compendium, stuff like that. Everything combined in one book, skirmish rules, siege rules. So I think 6th edition would be my go-to. If that was from now on the only edition I could ever play, that would be the one that I would choose. Though I would miss the other ones too.
I'm going to ask you some questions about the new old world. Obviously, we have to talk about that. But even if we cast that aside for a minute, and even if that wasn't happening, people would still be playing the old editions as they are today. Why do you think, for a game that has not been supported for so long, it's still very popular with a lot of people?
I think that will differ from person to person. It is, of course, a huge investment in time and money that you put in to buying this game if you want to have a fully painted army. So that's not something that you throw away easily. There's also, of course, the aspect that you put in a little bit of yourself in those armies. If you paint something, then you will develop your own style and you will develop your own stories with your army. So you will get emotionally attached to your miniatures. At least that's how it works for me. I know that some people just sell off their miniatures and buy fully painted armies, and then that's all fine. So that's something that you want to keep on, and if you have it, and if you don't want to toss it because it's cost you so much money, and you've got this nostalgic emotional attachment, then you also want to take it out sometimes and play it. And if the game is no longer supported, then well, let's just play with the books that we still have and with the editions that we used to play. And I think that after the old world ended, so after the Warhammer stopped being supported, that was when people rediscovered all of those old editions that they used to love. And you see now that there's actually a sort of split between people who play the old Hammer edition, so first, second, and third. There are some people who play mostly the Hero Hammer editions, fourth and fifth. There's a large 6th edition community, and there's a large 8th edition community. 7th edition, we just don't talk about that. That's that one's a little bit weird. But that's you see people now gravitating towards their own favorite editions, and then you've also got people like me who will play any edition as long as you are willing to roll some dice.
Do you see them as, I know you've literally just said about lots of similarities, but do you still see them as clearly defined in different games that you prefer not to mix and match, maybe miniatures or eras or things like that? So it just, whether people quote unquote are playing it very properly with the correct miniatures for the correct era, or, some people are just happy to say, okay, I've got high elves here, who cares what era they're from, I'm going to play them in this particular edition.
Yeah, I've seen both. I know some people who want to have, say, a 3rd edition army with just the miniatures that were around at the time, so just the up to and including 3rd edition. For me, it's just whatever I can get my hands on, and I think High Elves is a great example, so thank you for mentioning that. I've got the 4th edition starter set, Monopose, Archers and Spearmen. I've got the 8th edition Island of Blood starter set, Swordmasters and Griffin and stuff like that. I've got a lot of 6th edition plastic and metals. Just anything that was that I can get my hands on and that I just mix and match. And for example, in my own Bretonnia army, I have some 6th edition miniatures and some 5th edition miniatures. And well, of course, now they are going to be re-released, but when I started my army, they weren't. So what I did was I used the 5th edition knights for the regular knights, for the Knights of the Realm, and these 6th edition ones that are a little bit bigger and a little bit more fancy with those shield emblems on the barding and stuff like that. I use those plastics as grill knights. So I've got a unit of 6th edition plastic knights that I use as grill knights in my Bretonnian army. And then for peasants, it's some historical miniatures, so some Perry miniatures, some third-party fantasy stuff. Norma miniatures make some great battle pilgrims. So it's just going to be a mix of whatever I can get to fill out the slots that are still open.
Were you actively participating in the hobby during the time that Games Workshop blew up the old world, I think 2016?
No, it actually came as a sort of a shock to me. I was in college back then, and let me think, that was sort of my last year in university. So I did a little bit, spent a little bit too many years about going about my studies, got distracted with a lot of other things. And I didn't really play much Warhammer back then. I did play a lot of D&D, but also not so much anymore during those later years. So yeah, I knew that there was this Nagash book had come out, and I'm not sure if I bought it then. I don't think I did. But I do know I picked up the 8th edition Orcs and Tomb King's book, as well as Triumph and Treachery for some reason, because I thought, well, that looks like a nice expansion. But I only played about once a year back then against a friend from high school. And because I hadn't even read the 8th edition rules, I just played 7th with him, because that was the last edition that that I had actively played by then. So I knew that there was this end times thing going on, but I didn't know that it was going to actually be the end of Warhammer. So when I next time got into the local gaming store and they've got all these Age of Sigmar things, I was just wondering, well, what's this then? Where's all my Warhammer stuff? And then they said, well, yeah, they blew up the Warhammer world, and this is the new thing. So then I thought, okay, I don't like that. I don't like change. I'm very I'm a bit OCD in that way. So I don't like big changes, especially if I don't know about them. So I thought, oh well. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to keep painting my miniatures. It's not as if I'm playing against anyone or so. So yeah, I just did that. And then my hobby life consisted mostly of painting miniatures. There was a little bit of a hiatus around the time I moved house and got married. I didn't have access to my painting stuff for about a year or so, I think. And then I picked it back up again and found that I still really liked painting. And then I found out that there was still a lot of people active on Facebook who were playing all the old editions. And then I started collecting a little bit more and everything. And then the pandemic hit and everything skyrocketed.
One thing that you've provided a lot of coverage and content on is in fact, more than Games Workshop, I would say, which isn't hard, is the new old world. So back in late 2019, we had a surprise announcement, I think we could say, from Games Workshop that, Square Bases and the old world, it's coming, not soon, maybe a few years from now. So it was all very vague. If I remember correctly, it was on the same day as, I think, Kings of War released a new edition, so there was obviously a bit of a dig in there as well, and it caused a lot of hype, and there was a lot of speculation at that time. Nobody knew anything, so there was all sorts of speculation, is this going to be 10 mil? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? Actually, the very first guest on this podcast back in summer 21, I think it was Nathan. And then I had Nathan back. I was just looking at the archives there. So I had Nathan back on in January 2022 to talk about the old world and what we knew so far, which at that point was still very little. So he said at that time, looking back, that he wants the old world to be, where's the quote? I've got it written down here. So Nathan had said that he feels the old world needs to be immersive, accessible, and authentic. So knowing what we know now, which is obviously slightly more than we did back then, do you feel it's on course to hit those goals?
I can only say that I hope so. I hope it will. I think they will. From what I've seen so far, I think the criterion authentic will be matched, because we are just seeing the same miniatures that were around when the old world blew up. So I think by authentic, Nathan means that it's got to have that Warhammer feel. So from what I've seen so far, I think it will have that. Immersive, there's a lot of hype, but I don't know yet. People have been playing these old editions that they have rediscovered for so many years now, that Games Workshop really have to do their best if they want to make this into their next big thing, if they want to steal people back from playing their old games, their old editions that are no longer supported. And accessible, it's getting harder to believe that it will be, because what you need for an accessible game is something that's easy to get into. At least that's what the association that I have with the word accessible. You can go many ways with that, of course, but for new players, if you want to play a new army, or if you want to get into this game, you want to be able to get a lot of miniatures for a little amount of money, especially if you want to get the people into the game in their teens, which is I think where most of us started. So early teens, late teens. A lot of people I know started the game in high school. So if you want to get those people involved, then you have to make miniatures accessible. And from what I've seen now with those new releases, those new Lizardman releases, you pay, what was it, 55 euros for a box of 5 skinks on raptors. Those are plastic models. You pay 35 euros for a plastic Saurus battle standard bearer. Those prices have got me scared that any new miniatures they will release, or even any old miniatures they will re-release, they will have gone up in price excessively, and that will keep people from buying those miniatures. And if people don't buy the miniatures, then the game will not be supported for very long, because they're putting all this effort into it and nobody's buying the miniatures because, well, a lot of us still have got our old armies and we're going to play it. So yeah, I think if it's the fact that we can use our old armies will mean that it is accessible for those of us who have armies, but for new players, I fear that this will not be a game that many new people will get into, as if they haven't had some Warhammer experience already, or if they don't have the disposable income.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And what are some of the latest updates that we've heard out of Games Workshop on this project?
I believe the latest one was from Warhammer Fest. No, there was one after that. But you had on Warhammer Fest, you had the release of those 2 new miniatures, a Bretonnian questing knight character on foot and a Tomb King character on foot, a new Tomb King model. And then after that, they did a post on the Warhammer community website. That's where I get all my information, Warhammer community, warhammer-community.com. I have to look it up because I know I spent a little episode on it, a little impromptu episode of my podcast on it, but I don't really remember what was in the post right now. So let me just look it up real quick. But we did see, I remember, some photographs of armies that and of miniatures that we will get. We will get some dwarf miniatures. We saw some dwarf miniatures. We saw high elves. We saw some orcs miniatures. Let's see here. Oh yeah, the main factions revealed. That was the main topic. So what they will do is they will focus on 9 main factions. And we also have now, I think we already knew that, but rather definitively, that this is, the setting will be in the geographical area of the old world. So if you look at the map, it's basically the parts of Bretonnia and the Empire and a little bit around that. But so no Lustria or Naggaroth or no Far East, stuff like that. And it will be set in the timeline before the Great War against Chaos, which was around 2200, if I recall correctly. And when the old world blew up, we were a little bit over 2500, so well over 300 years before the what you might call the present timeline when the game ended. And what we see here is that the game will focus initially on 9 main factions, which are the Empire, the Dwarves, Bretonnia, Wood Elves, and High Elves, for the forces of good. But I believe they rectified that. I thought it said good factions here at first, and then evil factions on the other side. And the evil factions are Orcs and Goblins, Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, and Tomb Kings. And that's of course good news for people who have been after, say, Bretonnia and Tomb Kings miniatures for a long time and have been paying exorbitant amounts of money to get some plastic kits. And they say that the other factions, Dark Elves, Skaven, Vampire Counts, Demons of Chaos, Ogre Kingdoms, Lizardmen, and Chaos Dwarfs, they won't get some initial releases, but they will get a PDF rules, free PDF rules so that they can still be played. And they also provided some background for why these factions are not so much in the main game. And at least in the case of Demons of Chaos, they said, well, you've got the Great War against Chaos coming, and by then the winds of magic will start blowing fiercer, and then we will get demons. So I think then the other factions will also start getting a little bit more love. But for now it's just basically set in the old world and geographical area of the old world with those 9 main factions. And there are a few that have not been mentioned, namely Dogs of War, I think. There was also another one, Kislev, I believe. They were part of the Empire, so... But when the first Total War Warhammer stuff was released, that also got the Old World logo on it, we all thought that Kislev was going to be its own main faction. So apparently not, I guess. And same for Cathay. That's also not going to be a thing, or not going to be a thing yet. I don't really know what Games Workshop is doing here, because I think they should have done this way earlier, and especially seeing the hype that the Total War Warhammer games have generated, they should have jumped on that and have said, hey, you like the computer game? Look, we've got the miniatures that are in the actual computer game. Just go buy them and buy our paints and go play with them. So, I think the old world will... I hope it will succeed, but I am rather skeptical that it will, because of just the whole marketing stuff and the way that the world is now. I know that a lot of people in the older editions groups are just saying, well, we'll see if it's going to be something, but I probably won't play it. So yeah, I don't know if that's not good news for Games Workshop, of course. So unless this game is going to be very, very good, then I think you will still not reach a lot of your original fan base.
Warhammer turning, of course, 40 this year. Do you think we'll see the game released within this year, before the end of 2023?
I don't know. I think they had originally planned to do so, but I also know that the whole game development got delayed due to the pandemic. I don't know for how much it has been delayed. Seeing that they have been steadily putting out some more news and articles in these past few months does give me hope that we will see something before the end of the year. But yeah, then they've also got this new 40k edition, and they've got a lot of other games, stuff like that. So I'm not sure. I don't know. They didn't put it up on the timeline, I believe, for Warhammer Fest. Now, I haven't checked everything that was put out from Warhammer Fest, but I do know there were some timelines, and I don't think that anything Old World related had been put on there. So maybe even Games Workshop doesn't know yet. It would be nice to see it come again in this year because of the 40th year, but well, they can also say we're going to wait for next year, and then we've had 40 years of Warhammer, and then in the 41st year we're going to start over again. So they might do that or try to rectify it by doing that. I don't know. It can go either way. You never know with Games Workshop.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow it whenever that happens. But yeah, no, I recommend you subscribe to GG's show and keep up, because you've done a good job so far picking through the little crumbs that we've been thrown. Switching gears slightly, I wanted to talk a bit about something that you're really active on, and that's paint challenges. So the concept of a paint challenge, of course, in one of the various communities online, is to maybe pick a theme and set a time, set a deadline, and have at it. And why are you so passionate about painting challenges, and what do you see as the big positives of them?
The reason I'm so passionate about them is because I need my deadlines to get stuff done. If I don't have a deadline, say a game or a deadline from a paint challenge, then I can just pick up a miniature, start it, get distracted, pick up another miniature. And I've got literal boxes sitting around of half-painted and undercoated miniatures, stuff that I want to do next. That's going to be my next project. And then I get distracted again, and they keep sitting on my desk or in a cupboard nearby. But if I have a paint challenge where I focus, for example, on a certain army or a certain theme, then that will help me get my stuff on the table. And even though it's not going to be painted to a great standard, I'm not a great painter, so I don't expect to have my stuff looking as if it was professionally painted. But yeah, that's as long as it's painted, I can play with it. And if I want to try out something new or try some new units, then I think, at least for myself, I want to have them painted first before I put them on the table. So I need a deadline to do that, and otherwise I'm just, next time I'm sitting down building an army, and I think, oh, I want to really use, say, Tomb Guard now, but I don't have any Tomb Guard painted. So yeah, then there's a problem right there. So then I just fall back to the same units that I had painted, and that's I think, and I think that's also true for a lot of other people, that they just like the pressure and the deadlines and the mutual accountability. Even though it's just something that you, for the most part, participate in yourself, there's no penalty for not completing your monthly allowance. Say, maybe it is, the penalty is that you're out of the challenge. And yeah, well, if that's the case, then you can still do whatever you want. But it's not as if it's going to cost you anything. It's not as if it's going to cost you money on miniatures or stuff like that. So even though there's no penalty, no downside, a lot of people still need a deadline to get their stuff done. And you see a lot of great things happening then, that people within, say, half a year have a fully playable army that they can field, or have finished some units for that they've been sitting on their desk for a long time, or have finished the stuff that they have been trying to do but haven't gotten around to. it's and there's of course a whole community aspect as well, sharing your work, having other people comment on it, just showing off what you've been doing this month, what you've accomplished, real sense of accomplishment if you finish a challenge, if you even if you finish a sub challenge, say 1 month of a challenge. So yeah, I try to always have at least one paint challenge going, maybe not back to back, but I do like participating in challenges, and that's also the reason why I did the Call of the Crown. There was a Call of the Crown edition 1 during the first year of the pandemic, and then after that it was a little bit quiet on that front, and there was another challenge that I participated in, which was called the Gathering of Mighty Painters, but it only had 15 people initially. And then when that was finished, I thought, oh well, what am I going to do next? And then I spoke to Josh. Hey Josh, can I borrow your brand? Can I host a Call of the Crown 2nd edition and just post it on my blog and host it on your podcast as well? Do some monthly reviews. And then Josh said, well, yeah, that's fine. You just do the challenge however you want. And I got some feedback from the community as well. So I changed some things around here and there, both before the challenge and during the challenge as well. Learned a lot from that. And now the Call of the Crown 2 challenge has actually finished as of yesterday. I still need to gather all the entries and all the entries for May and all the final entries and post them up on my blog. And I believe that the initial plan was to make a video with the final army shots. So I have to see if somebody can do that. It would be nice. I don't have the video editing skills myself to do that, but I think we can find someone. And then we have completed another challenge. And right before this challenge finished, I heard that in the 4th edition Warhammer Facebook group, there was a gentleman who wanted to do a 4th edition themed challenge. So I picked his brain a little bit and thought, well, that sounds like fun. I'm probably going to sign up for that one next. So challenges are, for me at least, are the way to go. And seeing as how many people participate in them, I think for a lot of people they are a great help to just get their miniatures painted, to slay the grey, to reduce the backlog, the pile of potential.
I think I heard you saying on when talking about the Crown, the Call of the Crown, that you was it something like 100,000 points? Not your personal painting, but combined with everyone. Was it something like 100,000 points?
Yes, we have well over 100,000 points. I believe over 120,000 points has been painted in the challenge. Up to and including April. This is the 7 months. The challenge lasted for 8 months, including May. And I haven't logged May yet, but I can. I've got this Excel sheet, so I'll just open it for you. Let me see here. Yeah, we're from what I've been. Let's see. In total, we have 120,632.5 points for the first 7 months of the challenge. And for these past few months, we've had around 12 to 15,000 points a month. The number of drop-offs increases, but I think for May we will see at least another 12,000 there. So I think it's safe to say that we're well over 130,000 points painted during the challenge. Maybe even going up to 135. I don't think I will dare to hope for 140, but that's quite an amazing amount. With let's see, how many participants do we have? A little under 90, I believe 88 different people. Some are in that twice with different armies. and I think around 15 have dropped out in total. So say around 75 people have painted, I'm going to guess 135,000 points in 8 months' time. And I'm really impressed with that, and just all the love and all the feedback that people have been putting out there. Just amazing to see how this speaks to so many people, how so many people just appreciate someone saying, "Hey guys, let's all paint miniatures together."
Yeah. I mean, it could be a solitary endeavor at times. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Bringing in the community element. It's just it's great. It's great, really, to think that there's probably a lot of miniatures that have sat for 30 or more years, in drawers and unpainted, and now they're actually being painted and hopefully getting on the table and getting some action at last as well.
Yeah, I've seen some wrapped boxes and closed blisters, sealed blister packs in the pre-painting pictures with some very old logos on there.
Yeah, it's great to see, and a lot of, when you take the time to go into the Discord as well, or any community that's running them, you see a lot of fantastic pictures as well. So what have you been working on lately with your painting?
Well, for the Call of the Crown, I've been doing a very large Beastman army and a smaller Ogre Kingdoms army. I had for the Call of the Crown the option to enter into the challenge in one of 3 tiers. You could go, say, up to 1,000 points for a leisurely tier. You could go up to 1,500 points for a competitive tier, and 2,000 plus for a fanatic level. And I was pretty amazed to see how many people joined at the fanatic level. At first, I thought I'm just going to do 2,000 points, and a lot of people said, "No, that's going to be too much." So I just gave people the option to buy in a different amounts, and I think that's also part of the success of the challenge, that people could just do their own thing. And then I saw that there were no Ogre Kingdom armies, so I thought, that's a little bit sad. So I'm going to make my own Ogre list, which consisted of Grease's Goldtooth and 6 Man-Eaters, the 6 different Man-Eater sculpts, which was around 1,000 points for just those 7 miniatures. It needn't be a legal army, I should say. And then, but my main army was Beastmen, so that was just going to be a lot of plastics, a lot of contrasts, and I did plan to paint every single Beastman miniature that I own, but that proved a little bit too ambitious. I think I painted around 85 or 90% of all my Beastmen. I've still got some plastic monopose, what is that, the Battle Masters or 3rd edition, 4th edition plastic gores with halberds. I've got some pestigors. I got a few special characters that I haven't painted yet. And I think I also got some Centaurs, but other than that, I painted most of the Beastmen that I had. I was really looking forward to the Minotaurs. One of the first battles that I played back in 6th edition was against someone's Chaos Army who had a big unit of Minotaurs, and they just looked fantastic. And he really slaughtered me with that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Let me see here. I think I painted all in all. Oh, I have to. I love Excel sheets, so I put everything in Excel sheets. But see, I didn't do that one. I have to take some numbers out. So it was 1,000 points for the what's it called, for the ogres, and for the beastmen, I think around 7,500. Let me see real quick. Drum roll, please. A little bit less. Almost 7,000 points, but that's without any magic items except for the ones that are carried by the special characters. So that's quite a decent Beastman force there. So really happy that I got them out of the way. I think they are one of my least favorite armies. They just don't really speak to me. But for completeness sake, I want to have them. So apart from the Minotaurs, they're not. I think they could be more than they are. The Beastmen. They all look like goatmen. There are a lot more beasts than just goats. So I think if they went with some more mutations, maybe some different heads, like a deer head or a swine head or a wolf head or something like that, they would be a lot more interesting. But other than that, got a lot of Beastmen done, got most of them out of the way, and then I can focus on my next project.
So as we come to the end of our sort of time window, GJ, where might the listener go to check out any pictures of what you've been painting, or indeed any other content that you're putting out, including, of course, your new podcast?
Well, I'm really terrible at putting my own pictures online. I do plan to do that on the Forces of Fantasy podcast group. I made let's start with that. The new podcast that I'm starting is called Forces of Fantasy, which is looking at everything that's been released for Warhammer starting at first edition. So the first few episodes are out now. These have actually already been released on the Wargames Orchard, but for practical reasons I decided that it would be better to give this thing its own show. So, Force of Fantasy podcast, you can find me on Facebook, and you can find the podcast on Spotify and on all the regular podcasting platforms. Everything that I could find, I subscribe to on Podbean, I put it out. So that's where you can find the podcast. And as for pictures, I don't really know yet. I had an Instagram account, but for some reason it got deleted. I had no idea what I did wrong, but apparently I did something wrong, and Instagram refuses to tell me, and there's no way to recover that account. So all the pictures that I posted there are gone, and then I thought, well, not going to do that again. So I think I will just stick with Facebook, but I'm terrible at posting my pictures there. I think the Forces of Fantasy podcast community group will be the main thing where I will post my painted army pictures. But like I said, I don't do that as often as I should. It's for some reason I just can't get that into my system to post updates on Facebook or wherever. So it's mostly audio, it's mostly the podcast. Hopefully at some point I will also add video, but I will mention it on the podcast as well if I do so. So Forces of Fantasy, that's where you can find me. That's going to be the main Google term that you need, Forces of Fantasy, which is the same as the first ever supplement for Warhammer. The first ever supplement for Warhammer First Edition was also called Forces of Fantasy, which is where I derived the name from, because I thought, well, that's basically what we're going to discuss on the podcast, the forces for Warhammer Fantasy and all the different iterations, and probably a little bit more as well. When the time comes, I will probably also dive a little bit into things like Wartime and Man of War, because they also deserve some episodes. They are great games, great branching off games that take place in the world of Warhammer. So that's probably what I'm going to focus the podcast on mostly.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast, brought to you in association with bedroombattlefields.com. Please do share the show with anyone you think might like it, or if you're feeling extra generous, why not leave us a rating and review on your podcast listening app of choice. Bonus points if you mention the Snotland Pump Wagon in your review, I don't think the Snotland Pub Wagon gets enough love in the world of podcast reviews, so let's all pull together and change that, shall we? Alright, thanks again for listening. We'll catch up again on the next one.